Hello, everyone, and welcome officially. My name is Mary Kate Scardillo. I'm a career coach within the Career Development Office at the Yale School of Management. This is my second year working at SOM with our CDO team. And I work with students in the Economic Development Club. I also work with students in the Net Impact Club, Business in the Environment, and I oversee our Career Advisor program, which is a group of student workers that serve our office and the student body. Just an overview for our time together today. We have 3 students that are here to share their experiences and perspectives. So they will do a general introduction of themselves, and then we've got some questions to get us started. Some of you were able to submit questions ahead of time, so thank you all for doing that. And we will be able to, that will start our conversation. If you have questions, you can submit those. I'm seeing here that our chat is disabled, but the Q&A feature should be working. So please submit any questions that you have into the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to get them. We don't have a ton of time today, but we'll do our best to cover as much as we can and then be able to follow up with you if you have specific questions. So that's kind of what our time will look like together today. So to get us started, I'm going to kick it off with some introductions. So why don't we start with Jason? Jason, if you could introduce yourself and then pass it off to either Peter or David, we will get this going.
Sounds great. Thank you for that, Mary Kate. My name is Jason. Nice to meet everyone here. I grew up in Ohio. I went to school at Northwestern in Chicago. I graduated in 2020, and I worked in economic consulting for 3 years before coming to Yale. I picked SOM for its focus on development work and society, and also its overall positive vibes to all the people here. I spent this past summer interning at the UN in the blended finance investing arm, and I'm one of the co-presidents of our Economic Development Club. So this is a very apt panel for us. I'll pass it off to my other co-president, David.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. So not only am I also a co-president of the Economic Development Club, but I am also from Ohio. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I went to Ohio State and majored in city and regional planning. I'm really interested in entrepreneurial ecosystems. And so when I was looking at MBA programs, I really valued the focus on, of course, both business and society, as well as some of the entrepreneurial ecosystem work happening. And I interned this summer with Climate Haven, which is a local climate incubator and accelerator. And so I will pass it off to Peter.
Thank you, David. Hey, y'all, I am Peter. I am from New Orleans, meaning that I am a Katrina kid. So Hurricane Katrina hit when I was 12 at home, which really inspired awareness of the importance of public infrastructure and government. So since graduating college, I've worked for a local government, the city of New Orleans, a business improvement district in Pasadena, California, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Southern California, and then back home in Louisiana for the Regional Economic Development Organization. And I chose SOM for business school because there are like-minded people. And I do want to plug that last year I was in your exact shoes. So it is very possible for you to be on the other side of the camera next year, and not only on the other side of the camera, but with a great group of peers like David and Jason. So glad that you are here to start your journey.
Awesome. Great. Thank you all so much. So at a very, very high level, what our office, the Career Development Office, does is support students through the entire life cycle of their job search. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions to each of our panelists in a little bit more detail about their internship and their summer experience and how they have utilized the CDO and other job search strategies to be successful in their internship search. Ranging from career discernment to networking strategies to offer negotiation, we provide guidance to our students throughout their entire time, not only while they're enrolled as an MBA student, but then also once they graduate. So we also work with our alumni. So it's a really great resource that will stay with you through the entirety of your career. We offer different types of programming. So we provide students with one-on-one coaching appointments. We do large and small group workshops and sessions that serve not only the larger student body, but then how we can, work together as a community and have our students work together, work off of each other to sort of grow and find and establish their career goals. So I sit on our career and education coaching team. The other part of our office is our employer partnership team. So they are outward facing, working with a range of employers and organizations to identify both internship and full-time opportunities for our students. So that's a really great resource that we have. And in addition to my work with the clubs, we also have a member of our employer partnership team that works with the clubs as well. So we do our best to be involved with the clubs in a way that's supportive, identifying their needs, and kind of working towards providing opportunities, resources, and information for them. So to get us started, what I would love from each of our panelists is to talk a little bit more about your internship. So David and Jason, giving a little bit more detail about what you did this summer, whether the project, the function, however you'd like to describe that, and then how you went about identifying and then securing that role. I think for Peter, I'd love to hear how you're approaching the upcoming summer and what that looks like now. So why don't we get started? David, if you would kick us off, and then feel free to pass it to Jason and then Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I sort of jumped the gun a little bit, but I interned this summer with Climate Haven, which is a local, it's here in New Haven, as you might imagine, based on the name. And it is a climate tech focused incubator. It's relatively new, and it really builds off of the work that I was doing pre-SOM, also working in sort of technology focused incubators affiliated with the university in Ohio. And so it was really interesting. And to me, it built on two of the main reasons I wanted to come to SOM. One was, again, this interest in entrepreneurial ecosystems and how communities, facilitate economic growth through supporting entrepreneurship and innovation. And the second reason was because of the climate connection and sort of left sustainability back in undergrad, I guess, where it was part of my degree. And then I didn't do anything really related to sustainability and climate for 6 years. And so it was through something called the Bekenstein Fellowship, which is a program for graduate students, primarily in the School of the Environment. But these internships, there were 25 internships available to graduate students in Yale to promote climate-related internships. And I connected with Casey Pickett, who is the director of incubation at Climate Haven. We talked, we had an interview, and then I actually got my offer while I was in Spain on our international experience, if you are all familiar with that Yale offers. So I was in my hotel room I think it was in Madrid at the time. And I remember, obviously being very excited. And the first thing I thought of was, great, I've got like a week to turn this around. Who am I going to talk to? And so I called the CDO one night, and they're able to give me some guidance, talk about their understanding of the program and where that might go. And so ultimately I did, of course, end up choosing the internship and had a great time this summer. Really, really blessed to have been able to stay in New Haven. That was really interesting. I feel like a lot of undergrads might get that opportunity, but as a graduate student, it was really cool. So happy to talk more about that. And Jason, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, David. That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to do a summer in New Haven, so I'm jealous you got that. I was at the United Nations, so to elaborate a bit more on that, I was part of the UNDP, which is a development program, and I was on one of the newly formed teams of the UNCDF, which is a UN Capital Development Fund. We got a new executive secretary earlier this year. His name is Pradeep. He's a Yale alum. He did his PhD back here in the 2000s. And since he just onboarded and took over the helm, we spent most of the summer introducing him to our member nations and introducing the agenda of the UNCDF and making sure people are comfortable with him and where he wanted to steer the organization. My formal title is as an intern in the Policy, Partnerships, and Communication department there. And the entire mandate at the UN CDF is to invest in the 35 least developed countries and help them meet the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So we do that by blended finance. So we'll give them some funding from the UN donor members, and then that'll help small businesses in these nations grow to scale where they can get more funding from public markets and things like traditional capital sources. How I ended up there is I had a passion for doing work that helped my communities. My parents were farmers in China before they came to the US, and I always think about them whenever I do projects related to developing nations or anywhere that involves agriculture. So I knew I always wanted to give back in some form in that capacity. So that led me towards the UN in general. In terms of my timeline for recruiting, a lot of this happens just in time. So this was more during the springtime. I went on, both my roommates were bankers, so they got their offers by the time Christmas break rolled around. I went into spring break, which is March, with no interviews and no offers. But over the course of 2 weeks, I got an offer from the UN. I got interview invites from the World Bank and another development bank, and it all rolls in right at once. So it's very stressful waiting for it. But once the time actually comes, there are jobs, which made me feel a lot better about it. I think the process is very fast. So I spent some time talking to people, networking around. There's a Hire SOM event, which is something the CDO I think hosts, but they'll have that in New York. They'll bring in a bunch of employers. I went there, talked to the UN there, and then I also applied online for certain openings that they had. And then after a while, I just heard back. It was a very fast interview one day, get the offer 2 days later, and then signed within a week. So it is all a whirlwind, but this is to say there's a lot of opportunities out there. You'll find something that you want. It might not be your ideal role in a multilateral because they are very big and they're very huge, and it's a lot of paperwork to get into an exact spot, but it's out there, and I'm happy I got the spot, and I'm happy I spent my summer there. Happy to answer any questions, but I'll pass it off to Peter to talk about his experience.
Great. Very impressive internship, guys. I hope to follow in your footsteps. So I'm a first year, so I have not had an internship yet. But we are in the process, and people start thinking about their internships at SOM and any business school earlier than you would think. The process kind of starts the first week of classes. People start on their journey, and everyone's journey is different. You will be around lots of consultants and lots of aspiring bankers at any business school you go to. There's a little bit more diversity at SOM. But again, if you are on this call today, I trust that you may have some more interesting interests. So please don't be shy, and please be encouraged to pursue what fills your heart. So I am fortunate in that I've already kind of lived my dream job and know that regional economic development in New Orleans is something that I would be happy and proud to do for the rest of my life. So for this summer, I get to have fun and try to do something crazy and challenging and once in a lifetime. So in part, so the CDO brings in lots of potential employers. So often this looks like a kind of like a lunch and learn, like during our lunch times, lunch will be provided and an employer will talk about what they do and maybe an internship program. And lots of clubs do this in association with CDO. So you will get tons of inputs of opportunities if you just stay alert. And if you want a free lunch, you can learn about those internships. So I've sourced a few ideas from those sessions. I also have a few ideas from what I was working on back home. So right now I have a list of about 20 potential internships that I'm very excited about. And that ranges from Connecticut innovations to insurance nonprofits. So all public sector adjacent. What I'm most excited about right now, and I will say this on record to speak it into existence, is Goldman's public sector and infrastructure summer associate. Because that is a perfect, I would never have the opportunity to get into banking for a summer without SOM. So why not have a coffee? We call them coffee chats to learn more and think about whether that's possible.
Awesome, great. Thank you all. Before we go into our next question, one thing to note for everyone that's here, all of our panelists have talked about this idea of just-in-time hiring and just-in-time recruiting. And it's a really important component to not only this industry's search, but many of our industries. And basically what that means is the recruitment timeline is a little bit later. So as David was talking about when he was in Spain, that trip happens in March. And so you understand what the calendar year looks like. Sometimes you may not have a solidified internship until March, April, or even the beginning of May, and that is okay. A lot of times students get stressed and feel this anxiety and pressure that it's a reflection of their candidacy in the market and in the industry. And it's very much not the case. It really has to do with the timing of the offers, the organizations understanding not only their need, but also their headcount and the budgetary needs. So that's something to really think about and understand now, even before you've maybe submitted your application. So thanks, everyone. The next question that I have for all of you is about the relationship between the curriculum and your job search. So in terms of the curriculum, how does Yale SOM equip students for careers in government consulting, in multilateral organizations? How have you approached registering for courses, selecting courses as it relates, if at all, perhaps, to your job search? And anybody can take this one. So feel free, if somebody has a thought coming on, feel free to jump in right away.
Maybe real quick, I'll just kick it off. I mean, obviously the core at SOM is really unique. And it's not just unique, but it's also really intentional, which I think is important in the way that it was designed to promote like a broad base of understanding and enable students to pursue any industry, right, including economic development. So for example, we have State and Society, which is very focused on the intersection of business and society. But even in some of the other courses, there's opportunities to connect what you're learning with nonprofits and public sector multilaterals. The one thing I want to plug is in choosing electives, there's really a wide range of electives to choose from that if you have sort of more of a niche interest, you're able to build on that. I took a few electives last spring, maybe one or two more than I should have, but one of them, which was really interesting, was all about international trade and sort of trade economics. And it was really interesting. And it was a faculty person who was really able to speak to her research interests during lecture. And it was me and only other second years. So that was a really unique opportunity for me to learn about something that I have not had an opportunity to work directly in. And Jason, if you have experience there.
I think there are some fun classes and electives that really can cater towards your interests. The one that comes to mind first is Kevin Donovan. He also works at the World Bank part-time, but he teaches a class here about market failures and developing economic policy in developing nations. And that was a really fun class, helped learn about different case studies, what's been done in the field so far, and just what is currently being done. I will also say it's also very fun cross-enlisted classes. There's a class at the law school which we can take. It's held by the IFC, which is part of the World Bank. Their old general counsel is teaching a class there about infrastructure markets and how to finance investment projects in developing nations. So there are very specific classes that really stand out to me. And I think I mentioned one in the Q&A, but we also have the Jackson School of Public Policy, where a lot more people go towards places like the World Bank. And you can do a joint degree with SOM and Jackson School. So that's something you should look into if you're interested in that.
Yep, and I will provide this. I am trapped in SOM's core at the moment. So during your first year, you don't have that much flexibility, which is good and bad, of course. So you are with your cohort, meaning that you basically take the same classes. Everyone takes the same classes, and you're with a group of 70 of your best friends, and you're stuck with them for a year. And some of the classes you might not necessarily understand why or how it applies to what you are passionate about. But it is a necessary page you have to turn. And I'm also saying this to be upfront and to let you know about the reality of your situation here. But there are some classes like state and society, which directly relates to everything that we're talking about. And we talk about roadway projects in India, all the way to, how can we close the pay gap across genders? So a really cool class that would appeal to anyone with your interests. And we also have classes like accounting, which are absolutely necessary if you care to run a government or a nonprofit in your future. So some things that aren't necessarily fun are kind of things you just have to swallow or rip the Band-Aid off of and get through and learn as much as you can.
Awesome.
Me-
So my next question is for those of you or for students who have joined SOM or who are considering business school from non-business backgrounds, how did you find the process of upskilling on business fundamentals, business knowledge, and those types of concepts, and making sure you're up to speed, not only while you're a student, but perhaps prior, so over the summer?
Mhm. Yeah. So we just talked about accounting, and there is a sort of a pre-SOM accounting module. And I remember, since I didn't have a business background, I took it fairly seriously, of trying to actually learn, of going through and trying to learn, what this was talking about. And so by the time I got to accounting, I felt like, wow, I feel like I sort of understand this. And it was incredibly useful. I did pretty well in that course, actually. So yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, it was very much focusing on the business fundamentals that I did not have in my undergrad degree. And I mean, 6 years from undergrad, trying to just remember, what is it that I learned in undergrad? So it was very much a process of relearning and then, learning those fundamentals.
Unlike David, I did not do well in accounting. That is not my background nor my skill set. I studied math and economics in undergrad, and I worked in a very theoretical field of economic consulting. What I found to be helpful for switching into more business mindset was a lot of my learning team. So we will take classes like accounting or entrepreneurship and things where you have to focus on starting a company, none of which come easy to me nor naturally. But I had to rely a lot on my learning team to help me explain certain concepts I wasn't getting during lecture. And that was new to me because I'm used to doing complex derivatives. I can integrate things, but I just can't do a P&L and I can't balance a book. So everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and leaning into your friends and your learning team members has been really helpful for me.
And I will second David and Jason, your pre-SOM modules and your learning teams are great resources. I also resorted to quick 5 to 15-minute YouTube briefs, which were extremely helpful, actually, especially in terms of accounting. There is, yeah, so also your first quarter, there is lots of work on Excel. So when you think about whenever you open up Excel in the next year, just, play around a little more and have some more fun with it and think about how you might be using that in school in a year.
Great, awesome. Thank you all. All right, our next question is about recruiting. So if you could walk us through what it has been like recruiting for the different positions that you've had over the summer. So if we can think about more of like the networking, the logistical parts of it, it would be great for you to walk us through that process.
I mean, at a very foundational level, Peter already mentioned coffee chats, and especially for just-in-time hiring, it's very important. The structured ones, it's still, of course, very important, but I think for the just-in-time hiring, people don't often realize how important it is because it kind of gets hidden a little bit more. And so for example, the program on social enterprise here at SOM, which a lot of faculty work in, has brought in speakers that work in economic development. And so last year, in the spring, I had 2 or 3 coffee chats with some of those speakers that would be here for a course, and then would connect with them after their course and get coffee here in the SOM coffee shop. But even beyond that, so for example, we're an economic development club. Peter and I are organizing the Economic Development Symposium here. And as part of that, we're reaching out to potential panelists and sort of networking in the regional economic development ecosystem. And so being involved in a professional club is a really great opportunity and excuse to reach out to anyone that is doing this type of work and have such a great intro, such a great excuse to reach out and just learn more about what they're doing. And being honest, because if they can't hire you, maybe they know someone else who can. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna second David's answer. One of my coffee chats was with a Yale alum from the OECD. And at some point they mentioned that most of their postings are very much for show. Like if you want that opening, you talk to the hiring team individually, they want to get to know you, and then they'll refer you through the whole process and they'll make sure your resume gets shortlisted. So that just very much says you will need to coffee chat for some roles, even if they're listed. So just make sure you do some due diligence there and good luck.
Yeah, that also just really follow your heart, because all of this will come so naturally if you are doing something that it's just look at the end and think about where you want to be and reach out to people who you're genuinely interested in, talking to and gaining solutions from.
Great. All right. Thank you all. So before determining your professional path, what other paths did you consider and why did you choose the path that you did? So how did you come to that decision?
This is actually, I really like this question. When I graduated from undergrad, I thought that I wanted to be a city manager. With the urban planning background, that sort of makes sense. And I realized that I loved urban planning, but I didn't want to be a city planner. And so I worked for a local government for a summer, for a year, did some part-time work with them. And ultimately, when I switched over to working with entrepreneurial ecosystems, ecosystem building, I realized just how incredibly interesting the work was, working with just such interesting people and really building a coalition of people across industries. And so when I decided that I wanted to go back to my MBA, it was sort of going with that initial gut of if I'm not doing a MPP, for example, or an MPA, what am I going to do? And of course, the obvious answer was an MBA. And I think making that transition has not necessarily been that difficult, I guess. I mean, I think that learning about weighted average costs of capital, I mean, definitely some learning curve. But making that transition, I think, was very intentional for me. Several years of deciding that I wanted to go back to grad school, that I wanted to go back and do an MBA, and that I wanted to do an MBA that would let me combine these interests, all of the interests that I have into one degree.
Great. Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, I was and still am considering some careers in data science or data analytics. I've been trying to find that perfect intersection of doing meaningful development work and also the intellectually stimulating coding and machine learning aspects of data science. So I've been trying to find more technical roles within multilaterals. But what prevented me from going all the way into doing like a master's in data science was just the, what's the way of putting it? It's the very all-encompassing and very general degree of an MBA. Like it can be applied to a lot of different things. And if I do want to help businesses in developing nations and also countries in general, I should know how business works. So that is kind of what drawn me towards this MBA instead of a data science master's. And plus knowing that I can also do data science classes here, like I'm taking a data science class at Yale College, taught by one of the leading researchers in the field. And I'm like, this tickles my itch there. Like I'm good there. It scratches my itch. Sorry, it tickles my fancy. I always get them confused. But I have been looking for just more intensive and technical roles. I think those are harder to find out of an MBA, to be realistic, because they don't quite come here knowing that you'll be a full stack programmer or coming here for a machine learning expert, but they'll come here for someone with a broad knowledge of business. And a bit of machine learning, you can apply this to different parts of our company, you can help implement it, you can oversee a team of engineers. And I think that has been really helpful skill that I've been developing and also looking into. So I haven't quite decided to go down that route yet, but it's something that I'm just keeping an eye on, and then seeing if there's a good intersection point that comes up anywhere.
Yeah, and I gravitated towards the public sector just because of the need and the fact that it is the underpinning of our society and our built environment and our life and everything. And there is a tremendous labor shortage in the public sector that all of you can help address. And business school may offer avenues to figure out, how to make government a little more efficient and work a little bit more like the private sector and figure out how to draw down some private sector funds and work through, you know, just how to finance all of that adaptation and efficiency in the future too. But again, there is a dramatic need for public sector leaders, and that, yeah, so that all of you can be, and that means there's probably a lower barrier to entry, that you're probably going to succeed in the private sector quicker than you would in if your goal is to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, there are more municipalities than Fortune 500 companies.
Great. So we started this conversation in some of your responses, which is awesome because it leads into our next question. Among some of the other masters that you were considering, so Jason, you mentioned your data science, and David, you mentioned an MPP. I'd love to hear more about why you chose the MBA. What specifically about that type of degree sort of made you choose that route versus another, or graduate school at all?
Yeah. So I would say that it was more, across my 6 years before business school. I knew, the moment I graduated from undergrad, that I wanted to eventually go back to grad school. And I just also knew that I didn't want to go right away. That I wanted to get out, I wanted to work, I wanted to explore my interests and see, really provide a better reason of what I was going back for. And so over time, that shifted from, the goal of becoming a city manager and the pathway to getting there, to, the interests that I had post undergrad, and then the sort of this new path of getting an MBA. And so part of it was just, this realignment with new goals. And then part of it was, I think, just, in some set, just really just setting my sights on a different path. People will tell you all the time that MBAs are degrees in leadership, and I think at SOM that can be especially true because of the societal perspective, where you're not just training someone to lead a P&L, but you're training them to be a leader. Jason, for example, you took IPD, and that's such a unique course to SOM. And so I think it was, sort of, again, just this realignment of what I was looking for, realignment of where I wanted to be, and this realignment of the path to get there.
Got it. And to elaborate, IPD stands for interpersonal dynamics for everyone. So it's related to how do you navigate conflicts, how do you navigate relationships in the workplace. And I think classes like that are classes you would only find at a business school where the emphasis is on working and business and less in a more technical degree. So when I applied for business school, I took the GRE because I wasn't sure what grad program I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't going to lock myself into one program by taking the GMAT. I wanted very broad exposure. And in full disclosure, I come from a long line of academics. My parents are PhDs. My dad's an MD, PhD. My middle brother's an MD, PhD. So we have a lot of degrees. And the question wasn't really whether I was going to grad school, it was what grad school I'd be doing. So I flirted with the idea of doing an econ PhD. I actually signed up for an econ PhD class this past fall. I realized I was completely out of my league and I dropped that very fast. So I think that might be something I come back to and revisit in a few years. But I picked the MBA because it fit where I was in life. I had worked for a few years. I had gotten an interest in moving careers. It wasn't quite where I wanted to be. And I wanted something that had a more government and multilateral focus to it. So that's why I ended up ultimately coming to Yale, but also wanted that broader, more general experience that could be applied to any sort of job or business, which is why I decided on the MBA ultimately at the end. And like David said, it's been great because it focuses on all aspects of business, from the people to managing to the work being done, and all different shareholder perspectives in the business.
Yeah, and I certainly am sometimes jealous of the School of the Environment kids and the Jackson School of Public Policy kids. They are those were the two other avenues I would have gone in. However, my boss had an MBA, which was affirming, and I do find that MBAs are better respected in some capacities by the private sector. And as I mentioned, part of my goal is just to bring the private sector closer together with the public sector. So reputationally and outsiders' perspectives also influenced my role. And I do think that I've worked in policy before and work on environmental issues, so I'm hopeful that those I can learn that on the job or have learned that on the job, whereas an MBA is more of a stamp that is respected and you can and transfers and gives people the comfort that you are keen and adept at general business practices.
Great. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about the networking, the coffee chats, and sort of loop in the alumni network as well. So I think it would be helpful for everyone here to understand a little bit more about what it looks like to sort of schedule a coffee chat, identify individuals to have a coffee chat. Is that provided by the CDO? Is that provided by faculty? Do you have to identify people? How does that look? So I've asked a lot of little questions, but I think if you can just walk us through how you've gone through that process, it would be really helpful for everyone listening.
That is a great question. I would say you never know. That's first. You really need to keep an open mind of for networking. And so, for example, it's very easy to cold email someone, right? That's you can send that without no problem. I think it's more important, and actually we have a great career management system with a lot of alumni lists that we can access and use and see, all right, this is the job that they got right out of SOM, and here's how they've progressed, and I want to learn more about that journey. It's also possible to then, for a lot of the alumni who are involved and maybe brought back by the CDO or a club, to not just say, hey, I want to follow up with you individually, but hey, I want to learn about X, Y, and Z. Is there someone in your network that you can connect me with? And so being able to have career goals and be able to share not just like, oh, I want to set up a coffee chat with this person, but I want to work in this area, and I know that this person can connect me within their network. And I think that's a much more effective strategy if you can get a warm introduction. I've certainly used both.
Huge fan of warm introductions. For an anecdotal experience, then, someone on my learning team worked at Capital One in DC for the past 5-10 years. His old manager went over to the World Bank, and at the start of the year, when we were talking about what we want to do, why we came to SOM, I mentioned I want to do development work and international development, and he just sent his manager a message on LinkedIn and then said, hey, I have a friend who wants to work with you. Do you have time to coffee chat with him? And just like that, I got put in touch with him. I got to learn about different opportunities and what a career at the World Bank looks like. So highly recommend borrowing the network of your friends. I had another coffee chat this morning with my roommate's girlfriend's friend's husband who did the YPP at the World Bank. And I was like, all right, well, I'm very happy this happened. And it was very fun. So highly recommend warm coffee chats. Cold calling does work and cold emails work. That's how I got some of my coffee chats. I think if you just reach out and you explain like, hi, who you are and why you're interested, people are generally more receptive to that rather than just a LinkedIn connection with no message. I generally don't accept those either, so I get where they're coming from. But I think as long as you put in the effort, it's like you're genuinely interested in where they're coming from and their experience, they've been very happy and very open to chatting.
Yeah, and again, clubs bring in alumni or special guests all the time. And as an SOM student, you have connections to all of Yale's campus. So, for example, I highly recommend that you explore the Center for Business and Environment at Yale, which is called CBAE. I am part of a climate intensive, it's kind of like build your own startup thing right now. And we have weekly meetings and introductions to founders on a weekly basis or entrepreneurial support organizations on a weekly basis. So really exciting. And just about every week, whoever they bring in, pings my interests and I want to have a coffee chat with them. What I would not recommend, but what I am doing is I'm also still working part-time, meaning that I have personal and professional reasons to connect with these people. So that gives me a little extra fire to make the connection because it does still apply to the actual work that I'm doing. Also, many of you may already be subject matter experts. And if you are, and if you have some expertise to lend, it's also cool to, not even ask for anything as part of a coffee chat and go in and make a connection without expecting anything in return and maybe simply with, providing some knowledge or some of your insight, because who knows where y'all will be in the future, and maybe you'll learn something along the way.
Awesome. So we have 5 minutes left, and I have two questions that I want to ask you all before we wrap up. The first is a high level. What is your experience like here as a student? So we've talked a lot about the job search, but I'd love to hear your perspective on what the culture is like. Aside from the Economic Development Club, what else are you involved in? What has it been like joining the SOM community, moving to to New Haven? Kind of a broad, open-ended question that I'd love your perspective on.
Yeah, I would like to say first off that it's Spirit Week here
Yes.
at SOM. So I am not just wearing this for fun. It is also Spirit Week. But I am involved in the hockey club. So we have our game against the Harvard Business School on Saturday. We're going to play after the football game. So that's going to be a blast. It's going to be a great time. But once a week, we get together on the ice, play some hockey, and it is very, very open to beginners. It is such a great group of people that want to see beginners try it out. And second year leaders every year that are going out of their way to help someone that is just learning how to skate for the first time. So it's a really unique opportunity. And then I feel like overall, I mean, the culture is amazing. The people are amazing. Over and over, I've heard people talk about their experience recruiting at other schools and saying that SOM just felt like the right group of people, or real people, or just the best people. So yeah, I'll pass it off there.
I am a little over involved here at SOM, so I don't think I'm the right person to answer this question, but I help lead our board game club. I help with student government and planning our formals, and I also help with Voices, which is where we have a panel where students share about their backgrounds, interests, anything that relates to them for 30 minutes for anyone to come and listen to. But I think the more fun part of this question is the SOM community and the people here. That is what attracted me to SOM. I came in here not thinking that I wanted to come to Yale right away. It was just another school that I was intrigued in. But what sealed the deal for me was talking to the students here, doing the interview, and then the follow-up that students had afterwards. People from my old college, Northwestern, reached out and said, "Hey, thanks for coming by. Would love to have you here." They made themselves very open for chats. And I think that's been true ever since I got here. People have been very nice, very friendly. And what surprised me is they've been very adventurous and open-minded. I've gone on some treks with SOM students all over the world. I was in Southeast Asia with them this past winter. And they're also down for very silly things. It's like this past weekend, me and my friend Edward organized a trip to America's largest buffet. It was in Philadelphia. It's 4 hours there, 4 hours back. But we had no trouble getting 2 cars full of people who just wanted to go on this grand little road trip adventure. And we went and had a blast. So I think the people here really make the school shine. You can learn business at a lot of different places in the world, but SOM has done a great job of attracting nice, friendly, and very society-minded people, and I really appreciated that my time here.
America's largest buffet. I have made a note to go to visit that.
We can talk later. I have many recommendations along
Yeah,
the
I
way.
can't wait. Awesome. Okay, Peter, what are your thoughts?
So interesting. The again, it's one thing I do want to underscore that Jason said is Philly is 4 hours away and New York is 2 hours away, and the Northeast is incredibly well connected via rail. So you're not only in New Haven, you are in the Northeast, which is, the oldest part of the country and really offers great connections and institutions that you have access to, which is very exciting. But I want to second New Haven itself is amazing. New Haven's obviously a city of about 130,000 people. I have heard that it is the most representative city in the country, meaning that the demographics of New Haven are approximately representative of the United States. So really interesting place. And you can have an impact here in your 2 years much more easily than you can in a larger place. So Yale SOM has really well-refined channels for you to make an impact. So there's the Inclusive Growth Fellowship, which I highly encourage you all check out. I'm very excited to start that next semester. And then I'm not part of this, but there are the nonprofit board fellows. And that's about 30 students where you would actually serve on a board during your time at SOM. So you would get experience as a board member at a local nonprofit, and you would be able to advise their activities and look at their finances, et cetera, et cetera. So really amazing real world experience that you are getting, you're getting here. And you will all live pretty close together because you are all in New Haven together. And there's incredible connections with the second years. The second years really do care about you. I'm speaking as a first year. And next year I will be a second year. So yeah, we all care about each other, which in other schools, I think you just go off into your different neighborhoods, but we're all here.
Awesome. Great. Well, we are at 12:51, so we are 1 minute over. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. It was great to hear your questions, so thank you for your engagement. Thank you to Peter and Jason and David for your really great insight about your experiences at SOM. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to the SOM admissions team. You can reach out on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Jason. But we're really excited to share this information and hope to be able to see you in the fall on campus. And maybe someone will follow in Peter's footsteps and be on this panel next year. So thank you again all so much. And we wish you a wonderful week ahead.